won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion has gotta go.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another superlative episode of the Atheist Experience. My name is not Matt Dillahunty, and with me today is my co-host Jeff D.
Hi, folks.
I am actually hosting on an off week. I'm Russell Glasser, hi. My normal week is next weekend, but Matt is a little bit under the weather today, which is why if you were trying to tune into the nonprofits yesterday, there wasn't one. So I may or may not be on again next week. Today is Sunday, February 28th, 2010. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas. We take calls from the local Austin area and also from the live internet stream all over the world. The Atheist Experience is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can find out more by visiting www.atheist-community.org. When you do, be sure to check out the fact page for answers to frequently asked questions that we receive on the show. This show is live every Sunday from 4:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time on Austin Access Channel 16. If you'd like to watch us live outside of Austin, simply visit the official Atheist Experience website, www.atheist-experience.com. Click on Live Stream at the top of the page. You can also participate in a chat room during the show. Also at the website, you will find audio and video from past episodes. If you click on Archive, you will find a list of programs that include links to those audio and video downloads and a podcast. You can catch fan-selected clips of the Atheist Experience on YouTube, and you can also see full episodes of the show at blip.tv. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits, P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S. Visit www.nonprofitsradio.com for more information. As I said, there wasn't a show yesterday. The next show will be aired Saturday, 2 weeks from yesterday. Weekly meetings for the Atheist Community of Austin are hosted at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road from 11:30 to 1 every Sunday, except for the first Sunday of the month, when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. The next lecture will be held March 7th. Speaker and topic have not yet been announced. If you can't make it to the morning meetings, you can always join us for dinner right after this program. Beginning at around 6:30 every Sunday, most of the people involved with the production of the Atheist Experience will head for Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive in South Austin. It's a great opportunity to meet all of us and all the people in the back, so you can express your appreciation for all the hard work that they do. Finally, the ACA also hosts an Atheist Happy Hour every Thursday beginning at around 7 p.m. at the Dog and Duck Pub located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. If you'd like to get in touch but you don't feel like calling in, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. We get far more calls on this show than we can process, of course, and we like to give special priority to people who are calling to disagree, and as well as people who are local to the Austin area. But if you just want to get in touch and say hi, or you want to ask advice, as so many people do, like I'm a teenager and what do I do about my parents, and not get a good answer, you can email tv@atheist-community.org. Let's see. Be sure to check out the unofficial show blog at atheistexperience.blogspot.com, as well as the comprehensive counter-apologetics wiki at ironchariots.org. I don't know of any other special announcements this week, and somebody can flash them up on the screen if there are any I missed. But for now, that's the end of the announcements, so there you go. How you doing, Jeff?
That's a lot of announcements.
I
We
know.
really ought to do something about that.
Trim them down.
Can't we just like have less stuff going on? That would
Yeah,
work,
we
right?
should.
Yeah, just do less things.
so
keep
call
more
in-
laid back.
Yeah. Call in early this week because I just found out yesterday that I was going to be hosting, and Jeff loves callers.
Sure.
So we don't have a lot.
Call in.
but-
Let's talk.
All right. How you doing?
Fine. You?
Good. I'm pretty good.
Yeah. I understand you're playing StarCraft.
A lot of
what?
StarCraft too. I'm just saying that to make a whole bunch of people out there really jealous, and a bunch of other people go, huh? Let's see. So there was actually some news this week about the White House. Obama aides. Unfortunately, I couldn't find on the online an update to this story, but as of last week, the Obama administration aides were supposed to meet with some atheists who are representatives from, what was it, the Secular Coalition for America and American Atheists? Were they the other one? No.
And Council
for Secular Humanism.
Right.
Sounds
All
like
three
the
of those.
People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front.
Except they kind of get along.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So it said several administration officials will sit down quietly for a morning meeting at the Eisenhower Executive Office building on the White House campus with about 60 workhorses from the coalition's 10-member groups, including American Atheists and the Council for Secular Humanism. Tina Chen, the director of the White House Office of Public Engagement, and representatives from the Justice and Health and Human Services departments will participate.
When was this supposed to have happened?
Friday.
Well,
Now, I know some people some of the more cynical people out there have given feedback to this story, basically saying they meet with crackpot groups all the time and smile and nod for an hour and then don't do anything about
but
it.
when you can't even qualify as a crackpot
That's
group
true.
and get that kind of meeting, then you know you're in trouble.
So hooray,
this
we
is
have been elevated to the status
elevated
of
to
crackpot group.
crackpots. At
is
at
awesome.
worst, we can say that. So that's something.
Yeah.
It's new. It's historical.
It's pretty good. I mean, would not say that the Obama administration has been like my wild dream presidency or anything, but this sort of thing wouldn't have happened under the last administration.
Right.
Let's see. Did you watch last week's episode?
Of this show?
Yes.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Have you heard Daryl Ray on any other show?
I have not.
He's the author of The God Virus. And he came on last week. He was a very pleasant guest, although there were some huge technical difficulties on that episode. In fact, I was sitting right out in the front of the studio during that show, and the big screen in the studio was showing nothing but a blank screen for the first 20 minutes. So I had to catch the beginning of the show later on the podcast. But
That's terrible. How did you fix your hair?
What?
How were you able to fix your hair if the big screen was out? You use the big screen like a backwards mirror.
Right. So Daryl Ray, I actually wanted to bring this up because I had a minor point of disagreement, I think, with Daryl Ray. And
Go
now
for it.
that he's not here to defend himself, I will just bash away. I'm just kidding. Daryl's pet issue, I think, was a lot about the meme nature of religion and how it, can be modeled effectively by understanding how computer viruses and biological viruses spread from host to host. And I agreed with and enjoyed a lot of what he said, but there was something he said at the end, which was basically atheists shouldn't try to go after people, after religious people, with logic and reason. Because if it's a virus, you're not going to argue a cold out of somebody. Once the virus has taken root in somebody's mind, it's going to defend itself. And he gives an example. I'm not actually sure if this was on the last show or if it was something I heard on the Point of Inquiry podcast that he was also on. But what he said was that he talked to a room full of atheists once, and he said, how many of you have had an argument with a religious person? Lots of hands go up. And then he says, how many of you won that argument? And a bunch of hands go down. Most of the hands go down. And he says, you see, there's no point in trying to reason with them. Because almost nobody ever winds up changing their mind due to logical arguments. Got an opinion on that, Joe?
I do have an opinion on this.
Okay.
If you're going to make an analogy between religion and an organism, then it's not just, you don't only deal with hostile microbes by attacking them directly. You also deal with them by changing the environment in which they find themselves so it's no longer conducive to them.
Very well said.
And that is what I think is the purpose of logical argument. We're not necessarily trying to kill off that particular religion microbe directly by poking at it with the
right, we're not trying to eradicate it from every individual person.
We're trying to make the environment in which it finds itself full of rational discourse, which is anathema to the survival of religion.
Yeah, that is very similar to what I was going to say. In fact, what I would say in response to the questions he was asking of the room, because I am one of the people who would have kept their hand up when saying, have you won that argument? I've not often, but it's happened every once in a while. And we know that there are lots and lots of atheists who are here having converted from religion. And I think the appropriate follow-up question would be, of the people who have successfully been cured of the virus, how many of them got there through a means other than logical arguments? I think most ex-theists I know believe, at least, that they are at the atheist position because they approached it from a perspective of rational inquiry.
Plus, I would have to have asked that guy, not that I saw the show, but in that scene with the auditorium and the hands going up, I would have to have asked, what are the criteria for winning? Does winning mean the guy you're talking to, does a face palm and goes, oh my gosh, you're right, how could I have been so foolish?
That doesn't happen.
That's not winning. Winning is being right.
Yeah. What happens is more like...
Not just believing that you're right, which is what most believers think is winning. As long as they can continue to believe they are right, they won. That is not the case.
Right. What happens is you put ideas in the other person's head which are like an antibody or a vaccine, basically, which might take years and years to grow and might never come to fruition. But my fiancée, Linnea, actually says that she was in contact with atheists when she was younger and still a theist. And she is mad at them at this point for not having gone out of their way to discuss the issue with her, because she thinks that she would have abandoned religion sooner if people had been willing to have those discussions. And like you said, it's changing the environment, because I have no illusion that I'm going to change the minds of most people I talk to. But what is going to happen is, well, when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure I was the only atheist in my entire school. I'm not really sure, but...
You think you were,
but
because
nobody else was willing to cop to it.
Right.
Ben, my son, who's 7 years old, keeps coming home and telling me that he's met another atheist at school. Somebody who was comfortable saying, like the subject just came up. I don't think he's like picking fights or anything, but the subject of God came up, and the other kid said, well, I don't believe in God. that's a change from 20, 25 years ago, whatever.
I have another question. If this fella thinks we should not be using reason and logic to argue with believers, what does he think we should be using?
I don't know the answer, and he's not here.
Because, what else is there? There's emotional appeals, which have their place. I think that emotional appeals have their place, particularly when you got one that's in your favor. But they're not clinchers, right? They're just ways to ease the journey. But mostly, religion is designed to take advantage of those emotional appeals, and scientific viewpoints only get to take advantage of emotional appeals when, by random chance, there happens to be something emotionally appealing about a scientific insight.
Right.
It's not built from them. Religion is built from them.
Science is actually handicapped a bit by the compunction to say things that are true.
Yeah. Why would we want to fight in an arena that is the home turf of the religionists? That just doesn't seem wise.
Okay, so now we've filled enough time to get full lines.
Awesome.
Pick one up. We have Matt in Memphis, Tennessee. Hello.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good.
Okay, I have a follow-up question regarding the God virus topic from last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a comment that seems that's directly on point with what you were just saying about converting people. I guess I'll start with my question, and that is, I was wondering if you could expand on, there's a lot of discussion about how religious views take on a life of their own and do whatever they can to propagate their ideas from one generation to the next. Do you guys have any thoughts on how religious myths leap from just a wacky idea in one person's head or in a small group of people to become an actual virus? What kind of things have to happen for there to be that transition in the first place? You guys thought about that at all?
Well, bear in mind that the whole virus concept at best is a metaphor. It's a pretty good metaphor, and the idea is that basically every successful idea, like every successful gene, got to be the way it is by being really good at reproducing itself. Like, for instance, I think in his original essay where he introduced the idea of memes, along with Susan Blackmore, I think it was, Richard Dawkins, or maybe it was Dennett who brought this up, but it was like Happy Birthday. The song Happy Birthday is an incredibly successful meme. It has almost no musical merit whatsoever. It's really catchy, but nobody would mistake it for a an incredibly enduring tune. But it's got this combination of traits. I mean, it's catchy, it's simple to learn, it kind of gets stuck in your head, and it's got this specific event that comes around many, many times for a lot of people that makes Happy Birthday really easy to sort of jump from one mind to the next. So I think when we talk about religion as a successful meme, we say, well, it's not necessarily propagating because it's true, which is one way that ideas can jump around, but it's propagating because it's got a lot of built-in ideas, like it offers seemingly satisfying answers to very complicated, difficult questions.
If I might?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Matt's question is about, are you asking more about how it gets started?
Yeah, I was asking really just how it gets off the ground.
Okay, sure.
I understand the truth isn't really what gets it off the ground.
Because what Russell was just saying is, I think that is a good description of how religion survives and continues to survive once it's formed. You're asking about how it gets started in the first place.
Sure.
Have you ever, had a suspicion about something and then found out that your suspicion was incorrect and then come up with an ad hoc alternate explanation, because you just felt inclined to keep believing your premise? I'm getting really generic here, right? Can you think of any time like that? Like let me make a more concrete example. There's a bad sound coming out of my car engine, and I think it might be the alternator, and then I go and look, and it's not the alternator. So then I think, well, maybe it's because I stopped the car and got out and looked. It's settled down now, and it's not, so I'm not getting the evidence that it is what I thought it was. My point for bringing this up is that when a meme gets started, it's not so much surviving and propagating because of how it is. It's surviving and propagating because of how we as human beings are. We tend to latch on to ideas and hang on to them longer than we should and come up with ad hoc justifications for them. And that's how that kind of meme gets started, right?
Right. It's a little bit hard to reach far enough back in time to ask, like, how Judaism got started, for instance. I mean, we can come up with ideas, but
before
there are a lot
Judaism,
more recent stuff.
But before Judaism, there were previous sets of magical, supernatural beliefs and mystical beliefs, right, that were all built on, ultimately, if you trace them back, you're going to find some guy coming up with an explanation for something and then being forced, but when his original explanation doesn't pan out, being forced to come up with ad hoc explanations to keep the idea in play. And that once that ball gets rolling, it just accumulates more and more and more and more made-up justifications. And in the case of religion in particular, it's justifications that reach outside of the realm of daily experience into an invisible supernatural realm where anything goes. Any of that making any sense?
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. And I guess it makes more sense sometimes to look at things like Mormonism or whatever that came about so recently that we can...
Yeah, I was going to bring up Mormonism because, I mean, first of all, I really enjoyed the South Park episode about Mormonism, even though I've read some convincing case that there are some ways that it misrepresented the religion. But nevertheless, I mean, there are some really flimsy elements to that story. Like, I mean, there's these golden plates that nobody can verify they ever saw. But in Mormon theology, there's also these ideas that they put out there that, like, okay, well, there are a bunch of guys who just happened to become church elders, but before that, they signed a piece of paper that said, yeah, I saw the golden plates, or at least I saw, like, the angel taking them away somewhere. And they, showed up way after the fact.
But if you're looking for the beginnings of religious memes, Mormonism isn't a good place to look. I mean,
True.
They didn't make up the idea of gods and angels and supernatural, religious things. Those ideas were already in play. That Mormonism was just the latest spin on a bunch of ideas that have been around since forever.
Yeah, it seems like Mormonism was a situation where you just had a perfect storm of pre-existing ideas like that. A really charismatic person surrounded by some really credulous people, and that sort of got it going.
That'll do it.
I do have one quick comment when you mentioned, if you don't mind, on converting people. I've never had any luck using logic or emotion, but I have done it on a moral basis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that people are the Jesus story. If you really present it to people, the morality doesn't make a lot of sense. And I've actually had one person really question their beliefs in Christianity based on the sort of the nonsensical kind of vicarious redemption aspect of Christianity, and it really took root with them. So I've actually had success in that.
Okay. Well, I guess I've always kind of lumped that approach and the emotional approach together, because when you go after the underlying morality, what you're doing is you're trying to evoke a reaction from the believer that, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a person that believes that thing, because that would be bad. To me, it's the same kind of thing, but I don't know where I'm going with this.
Right. Well, I mean, but one of the reasons that it's not necessarily a bad thing to do this is that, religion gets away with it because it's effective. And if you find the emotional appeal that works for you, feel free to push that advantage.
As long as you're
being honest.
Yeah, ethically, I think you should not be using emotional appeals unless you actually are pretty darn objectively, rationally certain that the viewpoint that you're promoting is accurate. You shouldn't be using emotional appeals for stuff you can't prove, which is what religion does.
I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, Jeff, but how dare you say that I deserve to be tortured forever? You got to admit that is a bit of an emotional appeal.
Absolutely, no, and that's why I said there's a place for that thing, right? That is attempting to get the Christian to realize that they're not really the nice person that they think they are.
Yeah.
If they really look at what the implications are of their beliefs. And yeah, I'd consider that emotional appeal. Thanks for calling, Matt.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you later. Next up, we have Chris in Seattle, Washington. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
Hey.
My question was, what do you guys think about the statistics and not polls, but tests that have been done of life expectancy of non-believers versus people of faith, I guess?
There are negligible differences as far as I understand. Do you have any particular numbers there?
No, that's my point, is that there is no difference. That if you had a group of atheist, logical, reasonable people living a certain expectancy, wouldn't you expect to see the illogical, the group of non-rational people not surviving as long? I mean, is that God's hand coming down and keeping them up to par with the logical, reasonable group?
Well, you remember that the explanation for that is going to be, we're Christians and we're not concerned with this life. It's, it's the next one that matters.
Right, but wouldn't you see that them not living as long because they don't really,
the Christians
they're planning on having an afterlife?
Come on, Christians get the benefit of modern medical technology, and most of them, unless you're talking about fringe groups like Christian Scientists and Jehovah's Witnesses and things. I would like to see some statistics on them, the specific groups that spurn modern medical technology. So I don't necessarily agree with your base assumption that we would expect to see a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you were proposing this as a scientific hypothesis, you'd have to make like a really solid case that you would expect to see that and why, and you'd have to test not only how long people live, but also whether they conform to the original expectations.
Are there statistics on people with, never mind religion and rationalism, are there tests, studies on people of very low IQ and very high IQ to see if there's a life expectancy difference there? Because I'd be surprised if there was.
All right. I didn't know if, so to rationalize that from, I guess looking at it from a person's of faith point of view, is it sort of just like a part of their brain that is irrational and they're able to think logically about everything else except that little small aspect of their life?
I think that's what, I don't know if that's from their perspective, what they would say, but that is what a lot of atheists say, because it's what we observe.
Yeah, and, I try not to get in the trap of thinking that religious people are in some way stupider than atheists, because, there are all kinds of people who are smarter than me and yet happen to hold this belief that I think is completely wrong.
And if I could clarify that, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the basis. You were saying it.
That's the basis of Chris's idea, right? That we might expect to see a difference because, hey, these are irrational people. Shouldn't they be doing all kinds of irrational things that get them killed early, I'm not
Which
aware
goes
of
back
any
to the
big
point
difference,
you were
and I'm
making that,
not really surprised that there isn't a big difference.
Which kind of goes back to your point that if we could have statistics on religious communities that spurn modern medicine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, thanks for your time.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
Thanks for
Thank
calling,
you
Chris.
for calling. Coming up next, we got Diane in San Francisco. Hello, Diane.
Hi.
Hi, Dan.
Hi.
How are you guys?
We're
Good.
good. You?
All right. A little nervous because what I wanted to talk about was that I wouldn't consider myself a theist, really. I've definitely been anti-religion for a really long time, but sorry, I'm getting an echo.
Oh, sorry, that happens sometimes. Just try not to listen too much.
Yeah.
to-
Turn
I
off
don't
your TV sound.
It is.
Okay.
know. Okay.
But anyway, my issue has been that I can't really let go of the whole God concept, even though my logic tells me that there isn't one. And I don't know if it's like a knee-jerk reaction, because I was raised with it in a really religious place, you know. So I have a really hard time. I really battle myself between letting go of that God concept, but I don't know why, but I can't say there's no God,
Well,
even though everything in my head tells me there isn't.
So how does this manifest? I mean, do you find yourself praying reflexively, or interpreting events as indications of divine influence, or what? How does this manifest?
It's more like if I'm actually talking to someone about religion or God, I always hesitate to say, well, do we really think there's really a God?
Uh-huh.
I don't really pray. I don't, like, when I'm driving down the street and the light turns green, I don't say, oh, thanks, God.
So you're just not, you don't feel comfortable saying it out loud to other people. Are you sure it's not just a social thing? Are you worried about their reaction if you were to say that?
Yeah, I mean, especially when I'm back home, and because
Oh, well, yeah.
I mean, and my brother-in-law went to seminary, which is ironic because he's the most unchristian person there is.
What do you mean by that?
It's just that he's very judgmental. He's very he doesn't treat people well. But
Well, that
yet,
doesn't sound unchristian at all.
well, that's a good point. Okay, yeah. But, you know, it's very holier than thou, and like, oh, I'm better than you because I know the Bible or whatever, and I just kind of shake my head and,
Well,
just walk away.
right back at him. Tell him you're better than him because you don't. Yeah, you have every right to say that. You have as much right to say that as he does.
That's true. And
More because you've got, a rational basis for your views, but at least as much.
Yeah, it's just like the longer time's gone by and the more, like, education I've gotten, the more questions I've put out there, the more I've gone against everything that they're believing. But even, like, yesterday, I had, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I was getting my hair done, and we talked about religion. And I had a really hard time saying, well, really, is there a God?
Did you say it, or did you not say it?
I did, but it was like, because we were both saying it, but I couldn't really say, well, yeah, I don't believe that there's a God.
Yeah.
Well, is there, I mean, maybe there's either something you still like about the concept of a God, or else there's something you're afraid of if you come out and say, I don't think there's a God. Am I anywhere near the mark here?
Well, yeah, I mean, you always wonder, like, okay, if you're at work and you say, oh, I don't believe there's a God, what if and I know that one of my bosses is very religious. So will that come back at me?
Yeah,
Well,
that's the whole social thing, and I'm not quite sure what it is you're hoping will tell you, and there's no magic secret to suddenly not caring about actual consequences socially from saying out loud what you actually think when you're in a culture like the rest of us that's mostly dominated with people that don't agree with you.
I still couldn't say I don't care.
And honestly, you're not under any obligation to go around wearing, a big atheist T-shirt and waving an atheist flag and shouting atheism, atheism, atheism at the top of your lungs. It's all right for you to be where you're at. There's, I would be concerned if nobody was being open and activist about it, because I think it's important, but I certainly don't think that everybody has to make a big deal out of it.
Right. We're here saying there's no God, so you don't have to.
And are you looking for a clincher from us that would get you the rest of the way?
I really don't. I mean, it just feels like sometimes I'm the only one who that I know of that, because everyone I know is either definitely one way or the other, and I really don't. I don't ever talk to someone who's actually in that place where there's no question. It sometimes feels like you're the only one that kind of.
Yeah. Well, my questioning lasted about 2 days. So, I'm sorry, but then it took me until my mid-20s to get to those 2 days. So, I still feel like an idiot for hanging on that long. I don't know. It's different for different people. No, we're certainly not going to judge you. When you feel comfortable saying, what you think one way or the other, then do that, and that's cool.
Or,
That's really okay.
If you decide that there is a God and you're a theist, then, like I said, lots of smart people are still there. We don't agree, but, we're just two dudes on TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, cool. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling, Diane, and good luck.
Thanks.
We have Bill in Howell, New Jersey. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Jeff and Russell, how are you?
Hi, Bill.
You guys are more than just two dudes on TV. You know that.
Nope.
Not really, no.
We're two dudes on TV. That's a
consider-
scientific fact.
I consider you great religious healers.
Oh, good grief.
Well, you've healed
Yeah,
me.
can we please not go from religion to rationalist atheism and then off in the other direction of putting atheists on pedestals and stuff? We don't need that. We don't need that either.
Whether you think you're on a pedestal or not, you guys are instrumental in my in the curing of my religious infection.
Okay,
Well, happy to hear that.
You hear that, Daryl Ray?
Yeah, right. I think I speak for a lot of people. I just heard Jeff say that he was in his mid-20s and he feels embarrassed for hanging on that long. It took me to my mid-30s, and my question to you guys is, what have you incurred when you've changed? What problems have you incurred when you changed your belief? Because it's caused a lot of problems for me, and I was wondering how you dealt with them.
Well, if you were going to ask, as it says on the screen, when we became atheists, Jeff, my answer is really boring. My parents were both basically not believers.
Okay.
So, I always like to bring that up because a lot of theists say that atheists have father issues. There are a surprising number of books and radio programs where they say, oh, well, atheists are just rebelling against God because God is a father figure and they all hate their fathers. My father is awesome. He's a physicist and he's a staunch atheist, and I've never had any family problems really, except for certain members of my extended family. So
I had
no problems there.
I had a great relationship with my in-laws. They've really helped us out a lot in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They've been very generous to us, and now that my belief has changed, the relationship is almost non-existent. I'm the one that's changed in the relationship. It's difficult to talk to my wife about this. I also have two children that I've raised one way already that I now, am in a position where I have to change what I've taught them. So I don't know, Jeff, have you had any experience in that area?
Well, my parents met as missionaries in Cuba before Castro came to power.
Wow.
So the religiosity in my family goes back really far and is really deep. When I was growing up, they both had what I would call legitimate careers in business or education. But once my brothers and I were grown up and out of the house, they went right back to seminary and got their religion licenses and became ministers. And that is the time when I started to realize, hey, I don't actually believe any of this stuff. So that was awkward.
Yeah.
Luckily, while my dad was really not capable of discussing these things, I mean, one time while I was talking with my mom, he walks by down the hall and says, "Oh, atheists are just biased against believing in the Bible." And that was that. That was it for our entire conversation about it. My mom has always been an extremely liberal Christian, dabbling in, Eastern beliefs and things and trying to make all the pieces fit in a giant jigsaw puzzle in her head. So she was easier to talk to because, more flexible. But even with her, it comes down to, ultimately, she says things to me like, "So you're telling me that after I die, I'm not going to be with your grandmother and grandfather?"
Yeah.
It's how is that my responsibility? I didn't make it be that way.
Yeah.
What you're telling me is you want me to lie to you to make you happy.
Yeah.
And I thought my parents raised me better than that.
Yeah. It's even harder. I mean, parents, like I said, my in-laws, my mother, that's one thing. I don't have to live with them. But in a relationship, in a marriage, when you're the one who's changed, it makes things very, very difficult. And, it's gotten to the point where we can't discuss it anymore because we're just on two different sides of the fence.
Yeah.
We actually went to, took her to the hall, not the hall, but the American Museum of Natural History, and she went through the Hall of Human Origins. And they have, in New York City, and they have all the skulls and, Neanderthalis, Australopithecus, they have all these bones laid out. She went into that hall and she saw what contradicted what she's been taught her whole life. And not one word, not one question, nothing. Said absolutely nothing about it. So it's been difficult. I guess, Jeff, you're not married?
I am married.
Oh, you're married to another atheist?
She was sort of a generic theist for a while yet after I realized that I was an atheist, but that didn't last that long.
Would you consider yourself a strong atheist?
Yeah.
How do you differ from me?
Well, it depends on the God.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, God of the Christian Bible, I'm sure you're strong atheist
right.
against it. Sure, okay. I would consider myself, and again, I'm kind of new in my whole new belief here in the last year or two, but I would now consider myself a weak agnostic. I would think that nobody knows what happens, and nobody knows what happened 2,000 years ago. Those stories can't be verified. Nobody knows what happens to you after you die, and I'm under the position that there may or may not be a God.
But, agnosticism is that term relates to whether you claim to know or not. Theism and atheism are terms that relate to whether you believe or not. Even if you say you don't know, if you don't believe, you're an atheist.
I don't know. Oh, that's tough. Boy, there's a lot to work with there.
Yeah.
My belief is there may be. There may not.
Okay. Well, sure. So is mine. There are definitions of God that people can spin for me that I look at and go, well, sure, such a thing could exist. But do I believe it? No. So I'm an atheist.
Okay, so if I say such a thing could exist and I don't know if it does or not, then I'd be an agnostic?
You're an agnostic if you say that, it can't be proven either way.
Right.
But there are agnostic theists. There are theists who say, I can't prove this, but I believe it. That's an agnostic theist.
That's me.
Then there are,
Okay.
you do believe there's a God.
You know what? I don't have any evidence. I'm not saying I can prove it. I'm not saying I believe and this is why.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would say this is a form of Pascal's wager, but I'm not trying to hedge my bet, but I'd like to think that we're not just worm food when we go in the ground, and I'd like to think that you don't have proof that we are. So I would think my belief is different than yours. True?
Right. Well, I mean, I'd like to think that I won the Nigerian lottery yesterday. There's a difference between what you would like to believe, what would be pleasant to believe, and
what you actually believe.
What you actually do believe. And there's a difference between that and what's actually true. And
So
hopefully you would try to believe...
If you say you believe there is no God, then that's also, I could also say I'd like to believe that, you're not going to win the lottery either. I mean, you
right.
Just as much...
I don't say that I'd like to believe there's a God because I don't see a need for one.
But you also
I think things are fine. But there are people who say, and I've heard many of them who say, I'd like to believe there's a God, but I just don't. So I'm not sure where you are. I'm just trying to tell you that it's not as simple as a straight line from theism through agnosticism to atheism. I don't think that's how it works. The better definition is there's two axes on a grid. One is is whether you believe there is a God or believe there isn't, and one is whether you think there is proof that there's a God, or whether you think there's proof that there isn't. Now I said that wrong. You know what I'm saying though? If you can be a theistic agnostic or a atheistic agnostic, or you can be a theistic gnostic, who's a person that does say, I believe and I think I have the evidence that can prove it. That's a theistic gnostic. And an atheistic gnostic is one who says, I don't believe, and here's the reason why.
So I would consider myself then an agnostic theist because I think there may be one, but I just don't believe anybody knows anything about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to go with this. You think there may be one. Do you think there is one or not?
I think there could be one.
But so do I. But I don't believe there is one. Therefore, I'm an atheist.
I
guess we're going to go around in circles on this for a while.
Yeah.
But the problem with
as a strong atheist, you don't hold the position that there can be none.
No, heck no. You take me to a South Seas island to show me some natives dancing around a totem pole that they say is their god. I can go rap on that thing with my knuckles. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
So what my position is depends on the God in question. Okay. Now, any God that violates the problem of evil, right?
I'm not talking about a known God.
Then I know that doesn't exist.
Well, hold it, guys. I mean, I think that these abstract philosophical questions about what to call ourselves are interesting in their own right, but I think
probably take up too much show.
They're kind of dancing around the main issue, which is you have a disagreement with your wife and kids,
but I was trying to get away from that.
Tension.
Because this is not Dear Abbey of Atheists.
Yeah.
We'll tell you what our personal experiences are, but we can't tell you how to.
I mean, I don't know because I don't get into. I haven't gotten into relationships where I thought we would really have those strong differences of opinion. I'm not going to say like, oh well, it's hopeless. You should divorce her. Or you should try to work things out. Because, I don't know that all marriages should stay together to their last grasping breath. Sometimes people just drift apart and are unhappier together than they are apart. But I don't know that this is your situation, so, I would hate to offer some kind of advice along those lines.
It's been my experience that most people that I know now who believe like I do, we don't believe in any of the religions, came to this knowledge when they're in their mid-30s. They've already married somebody who believes the way they used to. So I was just wondering if you guys had any experience with how people deal with that.
Afraid not.
I was looking for a label because now that I don't believe in Christianity. You know, I'm constantly being asked by family members, "Well, what are you now?"
Yeah, well, okay.
I just tend to think that the label doesn't matter so much as the underlying concept.
But the label seems to matter to his relatives.
Okay.
Right?
It does,
And
yeah.
and here's the thing. I mean, the reason I was going on and on and on about this theism versus atheism and Gnosticism versus agnosticism thing is that using those two different sets of terms to figure out where you're at is more accurate than what people normally do, which is say there's theists who believe, atheists who don't believe, or atheists who believe there isn't, and then agnostics in the middle who just don't know. And that actually leads to a lot of problems, the biggest one of which is theists like to bash people over the head saying, no, you're an agnostic because you're not one of these people we call atheists who absolutely for sure says there isn't a God. Therefore, you need to just shut up because you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, that's awfully difficult to
It's ridiculous.
to deal with. It's not helpful to the discussion,
Yeah.
but it gets used that way all the time. So I try to steer people away from looking at things in that simplistic way.
Okay.
But for your trouble with your wife, boy, you know, I think the more important thing is not whether one of you believes in an invisible supernatural force. The important thing is whether you like each other. You know, that's really the important thing. And if you like the other person, you're not going to bash them over the head with your viewpoint, whatever your viewpoint happens to be.
Yeah.
Right? That's the important thing.
I mean, I think myself, I've become the type of person, like, when somebody first finds religion and they get all excited about it and they feel like they want to go and bash everybody over the head with it, I'm the other way. I'm excited to learn the truth, and I kind of want her to learn it. I want everyone to learn it. And I've learned that, you know, just like a religious person who goes out and spouts it, you just can't do that. You just can't. I mean, she's going to have to.
Well, some people can. Some people can, but you know, that's a decision for you to make. I don't think there's any. Like I told the woman from California, who was having trouble expressing her atheistic views. It's like, well, you know, nobody's saying that you have to be vocal about it.
Yeah, you know, in my experience, it's not good to be. You get a lot of negative treatment when you voice it, especially in my community. You know?
Right, and it's your situation is what matters to you, right? There's plenty of other people out there, being the atheist spokespeople, you know, Richard Dawkins and so on, and they're doing a fabulous job, and you know, people like that are in that position can go ahead and make a big noise about it, and I'm glad that there are such people. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean everybody has to be like that.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for calling, Bill.
Bye-bye.
And let's see.
It is, I'm telling you, it's Dear Abby of atheists.
Yeah, well, if we were Dear Abby, we would say seek marriage counseling, because that's what she says to everybody. And she gets paid for it.
Well, there's that too. That would be different.
Yeah, that would be different. It would be nice too. I happened to notice another link from my search for Obama meeting with atheists.
Yeah?
That is just, you know, hilarious. Media Matters found that Sean Hannity declared that this meeting was special treatment for atheists. Disregarding the fact that the president has already met with Pope Benedict, the Dalai Lama, the Mormon president, and Jewish leaders.
Right.
And he's meeting Pope Benedict a second time, which already makes just that one religion get twice as much attention as us.
Right, so who's getting the special treatment?
Yeah, dumbass. So next we have Mike in Phoenix, Arizona. Hello, Mike.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Mike.
How are you?
Good. I'm wanted to actually talk about the life expectancy discussion that was brought up.
First caller, yeah?
Yeah, from the first caller. I think one of the things he might have been getting at was that by saying that theists and atheists have similar life expectancies, that maybe like theism isn't that bad. Like people, they have a belief in God, but they still carry on with their life the same as an atheist. They still, make basically all the same decisions, and then
they don't though, and that was my point by bringing up the fact that most theists do get the benefit of medical technology, which has come from science, which has at the very least come from setting down superstitious assumptions about how the body functions and superstitious rules about what you are or aren't allowed to study about biology or believe about biology, and go ahead with the hard work of actually figuring out how things actually work and building coming up with the medicines and the medical techniques and
you mean like the way that there used to be religiously motivated injunctions against dissecting corpses to see what's
excellent
inside.
Example, right. So I think that we need to take into account that a society formed entirely of those people who are in religious organizations who would be against the developments that led to the medical technology we've already got, those people would be living less long if they were running things. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying. I just think that all those things that you were talking about, the scientific discoveries, I don't see those as being incompatible with theism or even religion for that matter, since you got like the director of the National Institute of Health, Francis Collins, who's like a extremely religious person.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating if you look back in history to watch what issues were great big deals with religious organizations, say 100 years ago, that are now generally accepted. It's the religions that are being dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century. And making special exceptions and changing their views. So if you say you don't think they're incompatible, to the extent that that's true, it's only because the religionists don't actually stick to their guns if you watch their beliefs over time.
Right. The individuals. I mean, there was this guy Thomas Kuhn who wrote something about called "The Structure of Scientific Revolutions," where he was talking about how if you look at the history of scientific ideas, like Copernicus saying that that the Earth actually goes around the sun rather than the other way around.
Yeah, there you go.
What happens is not that the individuals who believe that outdated stuff change their minds. What happens is they die, and a bunch of new people come in who have been hearing that and accepting that as something that makes sense. And didn't start with this culture that was fully saturated in the idea that the Earth has to be the center of the universe. And so the young people grow up and become the old respected scientists, and the old respected scientists who thought that the Earth was the center of the universe are dead. And religion goes through that same cultural shift over time, although they don't wanna. Look at how much gay ministers are in the news these days, right? That wouldn't have even been a question 100 years ago. I mean, there's no way that those people would have come up. And now, right. They're not fully accepted, but they are. I mean, there's an active debate, and there are a whole bunch of people fervently defending the idea that there should be more gay ministers. And 100 years from now, that probably will not even be an issue anymore.
Which is
there will just be gay ministers everywhere.
And which is not to say that therefore, because religions change over time, that they are not a force for regressive social and scientific views. Because they are, because they're always saying that they knew, the truth all along. religions don't fess up about the fact that they're changing all the time. They don't look at their own history, and when they do, they brush it off as if it didn't matter. But when in fact what it does is demonstrate that they were wrong all the time.
Right. Or nowadays you hear Christians saying, "Look at all the stuff about the Big Bang that perfectly matches up to things that were already in the Bible." You know, it's amazing.
Never mind the fact of
foresight.
the century
I find that
during
kind of
which.
mentality to be pretty rare, though. I mean, that's
I find it pretty
my
common.
personal experience.
I'm glad that
don't
you
know
find
what the
yourself surrounded
statistics are
by forward-thinking religionists. That's actually only a portion of them.
Yes. Oh, forward-thinking religion? No, I don't. I mean, what percentage of the United States is theist? Probably over 90%.
Yeah. And what percentage of the U.S.
85.
Agrees with the theory of evolution? That's less than 50.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Right.
Just
and
goes to illustrate my point.
how many of those people who don't believe in evolution are atheists? I
Not
think
many.
bordering on zero.
So I think this whole thing about life expectancy. Besides, I'd like to ask, since when is life expectancy necessarily the deciding factor on whether a point of view is a good idea or not?
I don't think it's the deciding factor. I think it's one of many that you could consider.
Well, I mean, I guess the idea would be if you're living longer and if you're having happier lives.
If we found out that killing and eating the brains of babies would make you live longer, I don't think that would count for anything.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty immoral.
And I've encountered Christians who have argued based on some studies which claimed to show that theism makes you happier and more content, and that leads to a longer lifespan, right? It's like, excuse me, if believing a bunch of bull crap leads to a longer lifespan, I'd rather spend a slightly shorter life believing stuff that's actually true.
I think if I can just be a little contrarian for a second, if it turned out that eating babies made you live significantly longer, it would become a factor in my decision about whether or not to eat babies. Now, my other reasons for not eating them would still be so strong that it would maybe give me another 2 seconds of considering.
My point is that when things like life expectancy are even raised as issues, it makes me think that we're going into the realm of thinking that somehow evolution is the be-all and end-all of deciding what's right and wrong, and that's not true either. Some of the best things about human beings are counter-evolutionary.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just think this whole topic is kind of off base.
Oh, okay. I'll
Right.
pick up, Bill.
Well,
well, no, it was worth the discussion, but I don't really think it's going anywhere.
All right.
thanks for calling, Mike.
Thanks,
Yep.
Mike.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
was I beating up on him? I didn't
No,
mean to
I
beat
didn't
up on
think you
Mike.
were.
I
Especially
did think it was an interesting discussion, right? Not all interesting discussions are productive. I just don't think that's much of an indication of
People should know
validity
when
of
if they've been watching this show for a while, that if you call, even if you agree, even if you disagree, even if you do agree with us on most things, if you agree on one point, we will latch onto that point and argue the hell of it out of it.
Yeah.
And don't feel like we're picking on you, because we do it with each other. So just listen to the nonprofits anytime. Jonathan in Austin.
Jonathan.
We got two
Hey, guys.
Texans
How you
calling soon.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Good. Yourself?
All right, good, thank you. Hey, I'm sort of a new atheist myself, probably for the past 6 or 7 months.
And when you say you're a new atheist, does that mean you are a recent atheist, or do you mean you are part of this supposed movement called the New Atheists?
Oh, no, I'm not part of that.
Okay.
Basically,
I'm not sure anybody is, but
Yeah, I used to want to believe in Christianity, but after doing some research on it and other religions, I just came to the conclusion that it was bunk. And just that. But I was wondering, because everyone else, as all other atheists probably experience, y'all probably have very religious family members. And one question that I sort of get, or not a question, but pretty much comment, is the Bible has foretold all these prophecies that are coming true. I'm just wondering, asking for advice really, but how do you actually intelligently retort to that?
Well,
I mean, 'cause go ahead.
Well, when you get a claim like the Bible has made all these prophecies, you can't really refute that as a blanket statement. I mean, you know, it's just something that gets thrown out as a point of rhetoric. So my first question when anybody raises that point is name one. Because, I mean, you know, I'm not going to discuss every possible biblical prophecy. I would like to treat each one on a case-by-case basis. Do you have any in mind?
I think the creation of the European Union. I think there's some sort of a story.
Give me chapter and verse on that.
I'm no Bible scholar, so I couldn't tell you.
That's the problem.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Christians will say that, and then they'll expect you to be a Bible scholar and be able to say, oh, well, that's chapter and verse, and this happened in this context, and have all these details to rip it apart. It's their job to prove there's a God, right? Just saying there's a bunch of prophecies in the Bible doesn't prove anything. They need to tell you what those prophecies are and then let you take a good hard look at them. Look at the context, look at when it happened, look at who wrote it, look at you know, what the sequence of events actually was. To my knowledge, there is not one thing in the Bible you could call a prophecy, right, where some wildly unpredictable event was predicted in detail in advance of when it actually happened without the person who made the prediction being in a position to help make that happen, or the prediction itself playing a role in history and making it happen, right?
Who wrote that chapter? Do you know who wrote Revelation?
Some crazy people who are now anonymous.
Yeah, we're not Bible scholars.
Yeah, I don't know. But
you need to call back in when Matt's on the show. He knows all that crap.
Right. He cares about that crap. But if I can move this away from biblical terminology, I don't know if you remember this because it's not that popular anymore, but when 9/11 first happened, in addition to all the conspiracy theories that were happening on that, there was also this stuff about how Nostradamus had predicted 9/11. And there were these very vague chapters that were coming out. That was like, let me see, I'm finding it quoted here. In the city of God, there will be a great thunder, two brothers torn apart by chaos while the fortress endures. The great leader will succumb. The third big war will begin when the big city is burning. Right. And there was all this stuff about how perfectly this matches up to events. Some of it turned out later to actually be made up, tacked on to the end of it. And other parts of it were so incredibly vague. I mean, like they were talking about the city of God. Well, I mean, Americans think all our cities are the city of God, and everybody thinks they're on God's side.
Right.
So, I mean, that could be any city in the world, anywhere.
And let's not forget that whether we're talking about Nostradamus or the Bible, we are talking about poetry written to be vague and evocative, in another language, giving lots of room for interpretation to make it sound more or less like what the interpreter wants it to sound like.
Right, because
ridiculous.
I mean, translating between language is already fuzzy enough that you can give like 10 different words that mean something, and in the case of like a French word like Elan, you still can't pin down the meaning with any combination of words in English.
Here's a nice shortcut, right? Whatever prophecy it is that they spin, it's always going to be vague, right? It's not going to be specific. Ask the Christian, why is it that this God of theirs who is omniscient and knows everything could not make a specific, detailed prediction? Why not?
They're always going to say, well, God's ways are beyond ours, some silly stuff like that.
I know, and you're not going to buy that, are you?
Then it doesn't matter what you're talking about, right? Then it doesn't matter what the evidence is, and if their argument is they're right no matter what the evidence is, then that's the time to like laugh derisively and walk away.
Yeah, our version of I don't know is different from ours because we'll just say straight up, I don't know. They'll just say, well, God is beyond us.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, and it doesn't matter that I don't know because I'm supposed to believe X, and so I do.
And then you can ask, how come God is supposed to be beyond me, and yet you supposedly know what he's talking about?
Yeah.
Right on.
So. All right.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks, man. You'll have a good one.
All right,
you too,
cool.
Jonathan.
Thanks for calling.
That was fun.
Oh, boy. Okay, we got two more Texans, not from Austin. We got Memo, really, from San Antonio. And I'm told that there might be a little bit of phone connection problems, so if you could hurry up with your questions so that we can catch you before you disconnect. Are you there?
Oh, am I on?
Yeah.
Yes. What's your question?
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And yes, it's Memo. It's actually
Okay.
my
Cool.
original name. But anyway, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, a Christian friend of mine, a couple of days ago, and we went to the point we had to talk about what created God, because God created everything, and He's so complex. Yeah. And He's so complex that He had to be created. It wasn't necessarily my argument, but it was brought to the table by someone else. Anyway, he came up with this concept that I didn't know really how to debate. In any case, is the principle of totality or totality. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it in English. Basically, it says that God doesn't need a cause to exist. It just exists because itself.
That's not a concept. That's just an excuse. You know, you could just say, if your friend says that to you, say, fine, the universe doesn't need a cause in order to exist.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, two can play at that game. And the advantage is there's evidence that the universe does exist. You know?
Yeah, well, he came up with saying, well, we don't have a time machine to go back in time and see what happened really.
So what? So what?
Just because we don't know a thing doesn't mean that we're justified in making shit up and then labeling that as the answer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's right. At some point, he was giving me all these examples of how God doesn't need really to be explained, because we can go down to the point in which we have to say, well, I don't know.
Yeah, but again, just because you don't know doesn't mean you therefore get to make something up and say that's the explanation.
Right, and if he's satisfied saying, well, some stuff just can't be explained, then he shouldn't be asking the questions in the first place about, well, how can you explain the universe?
And he's not really
he's
saying...
not being honest with you.
He's not being honest. He's saying we get to a point where we have to say, I don't know, and then he doesn't say, I don't know, does he? He says God did it. He says he knows that his God did it, which is cheating. He either knows or he doesn't know.
Yeah, understood, yeah. Actually, I was trying to... Well, I have the conversation over the Internet. I don't really have it face-to-face.
Yeah.
It's like a blog type of thing, a video blog, actually. So, yeah, at some point I had to tell him, well, if you don't know, that's the best... That's exactly what I told him. That's the best way to go about it and be honest and say, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that his answer will be at some point, well, if you don't know, how can you know that God didn't do it?
Well, he'll say that, but then the point is that it's not that we know that God didn't do it. It's that we know there is evidence of what went on at the time of the Big Bang, and that is actual evidence that is being studied by scientists, and that evidence is not leading in the direction of an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent creator God. It's leading in weird, bizarre quantum physics directions, which are strange, but you don't get the Christian God out of that. So, you know, the only way you're going to move off of the position of I don't know is by finding out. And you don't find out by just making up God. You find out by looking at the evidence.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I know you guys refer people to a website. What is it called? That has all the information about all the scientific information about how the universe was.
It's talkorigins.org. It's a site that was composed to basically collect information put out there on the news group talk.origins. And one of the best things that they have on that site is a giant, it's called the Index to Creationist Claims. If you Google that, it'll probably take you straight to Talk Origins.
Okay, excellent.
All right.
Well, that was pretty much it, and thank you for taking my call.
Great, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Memo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I've mentioned in the past that there are a number of topics we can bring up which are guaranteed to get lots of atheists riled up because not all of us agree with each other about particular things.
Yeah.
One of those topics is 9/11 conspiracy theories, and another one is objectivism.
Oh, no, objectivism?
Both you and I disagree with, and a lot of our viewers obviously do agree with.
Fantastic.
We've got a caller who wants to talk about that, and it's Andrew in Dallas.
Yes, and
hi, Andrew.
Hi, and yeah, I do. I've been watching your show for a while, and I really like what you have to say, and I agree with almost everything you have to say.
Almost, thank you.
Yeah, in fact, I remember watching the show you did on Objectivism, and you actually said you did agree with Ayn Rand on metaphysical and epistemological claims. Is that right?
I mean, I don't disagree with Ayn Rand about everything she ever said.
Right. Well, you agree with her that reasons man's only guide to action, or correct? You can only guide your way through life using your reason. Would you agree with that? Her epistemological view on those points.
I'm not.
But, I wouldn't, because clearly there are a lot of people who blunder their way through life without doing that.
I guess the real question would be:
if you're asking whether that's the best thing to do, is that what you're saying? That is the better way to behave?
The proper way to live their life is.
Sure.
I would say that I prefer
and if they don't
that.
use reason, that would be very harmful to them.
Sure.
Sure.
You would agree with that. All right.
Well,
so you're basically,
we had previous callers that brought up the life expectancy thing as evidence that religiosity is not necessarily that harmful, at least in that arena. So harmfulness is a complex issue that we'd have to look at separately.
Right.
Right.
But anyway, go on.
But you would agree that every person in the world would have to use reason.
Where do you get have to?
Clearly not.
They don't have to use reason?
A lot of them don't.
In order to live.
Right.
You mean that you can...
Well, I mean, would you say that? Would you say that?
Well, there are people who eat because they're hungry, as opposed to eating because they realize they need food in order to survive.
Yeah. Would you say that my cat goes through life with reason?
I think if you need to get food, you have to use reason.
Well, again, would you say that my cat uses reason to get through life?
Well, you're not. Reason is for human beings. I mean, I think.
Well, okay, then my cat goes around eating
people,
just fine, right?
Not for animals, because animals, are born with these instincts, such as a bird can be born knowing how to build a nest, but humans are not born knowing how to build a house. They have to use their reason in order to.
Humans don't have to have a house in order to live.
Well, they have to have. Shelter in order to live, and
that's true, and so does my cat.
And humans have no instincts that would lead them to shelter if they were out in the wilderness on their own?
Sorry?
Humans have no instinct to seek shelter?
I think they have no instinct on how to build shelter.
And didn't we just agree? Didn't we just agree they don't need to build shelters? There's shelter to be found in nature. Right. There was a point at which our early hominid ancestors weren't building houses either, dude.
Sorry?
There was a point at which our hominid ancestors weren't building houses either.
Right.
You're not going to be able to partition off animals from humans and say that special rules apply to humans that don't apply to animals.
Yeah, especially
that's not going to work.
Especially if you're going to accept.
I thought we'd get a lot deeper into this before we encountered some stuff that was like completely freaking crazy.
Well, especially if you're going to accept like the scientific idea of evolution, which says that there's not really some magical dividing line between humans and animals. There's just a matter of degree. I mean, reasoning happens to be our niche, but there is some kind of rudimentary reasoning capability.
You were much better off when, for a moment, you seemed to agree that what you should be saying is only that, you know, using reason to survive is better than not using it. If that was all you were saying, I think Russell and I would agree. But you keep saying have to, and as soon as you say have to, we are off on a magical journey examining the relationships between humans and animals.
Well, I think that I mean, if you don't use reason, you're eventually going to. I mean, you cannot survive for very long. You're gonna.
And that's why no animals in nature survive very long.
Right. So.
Dude, no, wrong. No, wrong. That's false.
Right. Well, I guess I'm not understanding your argument then.
Yeah,
I guess you're not.
Right.
Thanks for your call.
Wait a minute. I want to actually get. Okay, we don't agree.
I think that when we
don't agree on this point.
All right.
Well, but what's the point? Why go on to other points? Is this like fundamental to your case? Is this fundamental to your case?
Your argument is because you basically agree that if man doesn't use reason, he's going to die. I mean,
no,
pretty quickly.
We didn't agree with that.
Okay, then why do you disagree with that?
Because there are examples of lots of animals living without reason.
Right, well, but not people.
And we told you there is no clear dividing line like that, between a hominid ancestor that didn't need reason, and then one day, bang, magically, you had a human being who did need reason. Huh?
Why do you believe that?
Why do you believe?
Because there's absolutely no evidence of such a line. What we have is a slow progression of intelligence, a slow progression between early hominids and human beings.
Right.
Andrew, you agree with evolution, right?
I agree with evolution.
Have you read much, like Richard Dawkins, for example, on the subject?
I have not read his book.
Okay.
No, I've read books on evolution, but not.
Okay, but I mean, you understand the point that there is nothing fundamentally magical about humanity.
I never said there was.
One particular branch.
Yes, you are saying that there is. You're saying.
In what way?
You are saying that a thing called a human being is an entity that has to use reason to survive.
Yeah.
And a thing called an animal is something that doesn't have to use reason to survive.
And
actually, I'm not sure you're saying that. You seem to be saying that because animals don't use reason to survive, therefore they can't survive, which is just nonsense. I just want to know, is this?
I'm saying,
are we wasting a bunch of time on something that's peripheral?
Certain things in order
caller,
to survive.
Andrew.
Let me just give you an example.
Andrew.
Yeah, sure.
We'll take turns.
Okay.
I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, this whole thing, your statement that man must use reason to survive.
Yes.
If I'm saying that right.
I'm saying every
Andrew!
Stop.
You're misunderstanding
let this guy go. Let this guy go.
Right.
Enough.
Sorry, I apologize.
You're
I
not.
Apologize. I apologize.
Let him go, meaning
he's apologizing.
I apologize if I interrupted you. I just felt like you misunderstood my argument, I think.
I'm just asking you, that you made that statement.
Okay.
And you don't understand our objection when we say that statement is false.
Okay.
And what I want to know is that statement just a peripheral, irrelevant issue that we're wasting time on, or is that central to your argument?
Well, I think every animal does something it needs to do.
That is not my question, Andrew. Okay, goodbye.
This is important.
Goodbye. No, it's not. Wasting my time is not important.
Right.
Good grief.
I'm kind of disappointed because I was hoping we would actually get to some political philosophy.
There's no need. If he can't get past his very first point, it's like completely falls apart the moment it's out of his mouth. And he's not even willing to answer a simple question of, is this an important point?
I hate to go off on this when we don't have an opposing viewpoint on the other end of the line.
Go ahead.
This is the problem that one of the problems that I have with Ayn Rand is that she had this way of making these like declarative statements about the way things absolutely are, and then like just asserting that they have to be true without like really laying out a reasonable case for them.
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, I would call that characteristic of objectivism.
Yes.
It's all well and good to say there are, the basic premise is there are objective truths, and from those objective truths you can form a accurate understanding of the best way to live. That is a fine thing to say. But then you have to start from actual objective truths, of which man must use reason in order to survive, is not one. That is not an absolute objective truth. It's just not. And it's
why I feel like
I'm not going to explain it again. We've gone over it 3 times.
I feel a lot like the Terminator when I argue with objectivists, because they're going like, well, obviously smaller government is always bigger than bigger government. Why? Well, because it leads to more freedom. Why? Well, because, it just does. Why? and that's the way it always seems to go. And we're going to get like a dozen objectivist emails saying I'm an idiot, and
Fantastic.
That's fine.
No, they'll yell at me more because I was meaner.
That's true. Let's see. So we got like 3 minutes left in the show. I'm going to, number 2 is too broad. So Autumn in Fort Mill, I think you might be, you're in South Carolina, and you might be the last caller. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Early in the show, I think at the very beginning, there was a comment made about one of the host sons being like the only atheist in his school.
Yeah, that was me. You have to understand, I grew up in Alabama, which maybe you understand being in South Carolina.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm in the Bible Belt, and I relate to this because of I'm a middle school student, and I get a bunch of flack for just being honest. I get a lot of people parading around singing hymns to me and telling me what a bad person I am.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice about what I could say, or besides just ignoring it?
Well, I mean, I don't have the same experience, because I was having that experience when I was like 5 to 7, something like that. And, the kids in kindergarten didn't really know what to make of me. They were like, you don't believe in God, isn't that weird? And they didn't get the idea that I was somehow morally corrupt. In middle school, I mean, all I can say is it sucks to be in your position, because, it's already tricky to navigate the social minefield that is middle school, where everybody is looking for an example of somebody being different. But what I can say is, count yourself lucky that that you're at a point right now where you're still learning stuff, and you're going to sort of go through the ringer of having to stick to your guns if you want to, and you're going to encounter a lot of opposition, and you're going to do a lot of reading and research that tells you how to deal with these things that are coming at you all the time. And I think you are going to be eventually a really powerful atheist advocate.
Yeah, I've already...
I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah. I've been reading the Bible. I actually downloaded a King James Version audiobook.
Okay.
And it helps me fall asleep at night.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid I have to wrap it up because we're running out of time.
Hang in there.
Thank you for taking my call.
It's all right.
You'll be okay.
Yeah.
So that's our show. That's our crew. Come to Threadgills after the show on Riverside Drive. We're looking forward to meeting you. Thanks, Jeff. And
thanks, Russell. This turned out to be a great show.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks to our awesome crew, and goodbye.
Bye, folks.